Welcome back to the Paranormal Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. Today's guest has joined us in the past to discuss things like cattle mutilation, crop circles, abduction, and folkloric or historical connections to paranormal phenomena. It is my pleasure to welcome him back onto the show. Today, we are talking about two creatures perfect for spooky season, Tommyknockers and the Wendigo. Jason Cordova has been studying the paranormal for almost 20 years now and always brings incredible experience and knowledge with him. So, cannot wait to share this one with you. Let's do a word from our sponsor and then we'll get into it. Ladies across the nation, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped. The brand that took your man's balls to space is now taking them to the ultrasphere. Introducing Manscaped's 5th generation performance package featuring the all-new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. 5.0. With new cutting-edge designs and next-generation skin-safe blade heads for different shaves, it's pretty much a spaceship to take his shaving game to the next level. Have him join the 9 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code PNG. High tech for low places. Manscaped. The performance package and Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra are here. And guys, gals, totally worth the wait. The 5th generation trimmer comes with a couple of new, way cool features. First up, you got 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads. So you can go standard and just take a little off the top, or pop on the new foil blade to go smooth wherever y'all's heart's desire. This other feature is pretty rad. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra comes with dual LED spotlights, which provides lighting contrast for multiple skin tones. So, wherever you're trimming, you've got options to achieve that best groom yet. And it also comes with 3 length-setting combs and a little carrying case to tuck it in at night. This baby has been a lot of fun to play with and to try it out. I especially like the dual spotlights. And of course, it being waterproof. Anything that saves me time and makes grooming easier has my appreciation. So try this newness for yourself. Go get it for your fella and get 20% off and free shipping with the code PNG at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PNG at manscaped.com. His boys have been through enough. It's time to go ultra with Manscaped. Today's guest is the president and co-founder of the Society for Arcane Studies, a group dedicated to the study of strange and unusual phenomena. He's previously worked as a field investigator with MUFON and has spent decades exploring the world of the paranormal. He also served as an aviation electronics technician for the U.S. Navy and is currently earning his master's degree in folklore. He has certainly done a lot. Please enjoy my conversation with Jason Cordova. So pleased to have you back on. You always just bring such great information with you. You're very knowledgeable about so much of this stuff. So it's always a blast to talk to you. And you are a first for the show today. 3rd appearance on the show. And
Oh, wow.
I just cannot wait to talk with my friend again. So today we are talking cryptids, not just any cryptids. Some specific cryptids, and you're going to tell us about these and elaborate a bit, and maybe give us some misconceptions and misunderstandings of one of them in particular. We'll get into that shortly, but first, because we haven't spoken since February, I've gained some new followers. I welcomed some new ears to the show. I would love it if you would just reintroduce yourself to my audience.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I am the president and co-founder of the Society for Arcane Studies, formerly known as the Crypto Science Society. Unfortunately, we had to change the name due to some unfortunate associations with another thing that involves crypto. We won't talk too much about that. But essentially, the point, the essence of the name stays the same. The idea of studying the hidden in our world, and I've been studying along those lines as a paranormal investigator for very close to 20 years now. I've also worked as I was involved with the Mutual UFO Network as a field investigator. And now I am pursuing my master's degree in folklore to balance everything out. And what's really kind of interesting, I have found that studying these kinds of things from a perspective of, from the folklore perspective versus from a paranormal investigator point of view, you definitely get a very different view of everything, and it actually can be very kind of freeing and refreshing in a way to look at it from this perspective. So I'm excited to talk a little bit further on that. But before we do, I did want to welcome you as formally welcome you as a member to the Society for Arcane Studies. Working with you, you've contributed quite a bit to the field, and to love your perspective. You definitely represent kind of the archetype of the open-minded skeptic, and thoroughly researched, and without bias, and really presenting the full depth of knowledge with a really strong mindfulness of cultural intention, right? Which is really the core of what we try to do. So I want to thank you for that, and formally welcome you to the group.
Well, thank you.
Hope for a lot more collaboration in the future.
Absolutely. No, I do look forward to collaborating with y'all. And I had not yet announced it on the show. So thank you. Thank you for taking the opportunity to do so, and welcoming me aboard. And I just really look forward to working with everybody. Yeah, we'll see what the future holds here, what we're going to get into. Well, with that, since we're on the subject of Society for Arcane Studies, because there were some changes recently. Some people this might be a new title and term to people, and some of my new listeners might not know as much about it. So why don't you brush us up a little bit? You told us what you guys are after and what we're about. Brush us up on what's new with the society. What are you guys getting into these days?
Well, appearing on a lot of podcasts, actually. Besides the name change, a lot of the core members are actually in the midst of pursuing various degrees, on the PhD level, graduate level, myself with the master's. Heather, you may remember Heather from previous episodes. She is working on her bachelor's. And so we're all keeping pretty busy with our academic studies mostly, but working little bits of whatever we can, when we can, to contribute to the group and our delving into the unknown.
Yeah. What
traveling. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. There's that lag. I keep stepping on you.
Yeah, I know.
I was just going to mention something that I love about this core group of people specifically is that, yes, highly educated, but a lot of you have degrees that are symbiotic with this study, or somehow connected or supporting of the study of the unknown, such as it says on the website, as we can see. I don't know how I can contribute with my drama degree, but I'll do my best. I'll be your actor.
Well, and that's something that I think I really want to make sure that people understand too, that there's a lot of academic elitism, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the case. sometimes. Now, of course, it is important to be mindful of that there are professional considerations too. Like, I'm working on my master's degree in folklore, but I wouldn't consider myself a folklorist yet. Meanwhile, that doesn't mean to say that you necessarily need these higher degrees to be able to have critical thinking skills,
Right.
to work diligently and have and execute the study with research ethics, right? Which is what you're doing here. And there are lots of different angles one can take to, having very different perspectives on things. So every little bit, every different kind of perspective contributes something different, and you never know, what you've got, right?
Yeah. Well, so you just told us about, the recent changes, what you all are about, what you guys are getting into, and the study of it. What kinds of cases does the society actually investigate?
Well, anything, anything and everything, really. Um, I would say most of the time, some of the cases that have been brought forth, people that contact us to investigate things have been everything. Usually it's kind of the poltergeist kind of thing, the haunting, somebody's got a spirit attached to them, some form or another. And they want us to come help us with that situation.
Mhm.
But we've also been called to go out on a cattle mutilation case, crop circles, UFO abduction, all manner of all manner of strange and unusual.
Mhm.
But probably the most common that we get contacted to look into is more like the common haunting kind of
Okay.
scenarios. That also, but because of the collaborative nature of the organization, we've always encouraged people to come forward with anything whatever they want to look into, whatever they want to study. One of the things that we did when we first started back at the Metropolitan State University of Denver, when we were a student organization, was we had at our monthly meetings, we would have a discussion topic that we would take turns, where a person would lead it, right? Write a brief report, do a little presentation, and then we'd all kind of talk about our thoughts on it. And that kind of evolved into different forms of projects that kind of brought us to where we are. So that is something all the members are highly encouraged to bring forward, anything they're interested in doing.
Okay. Well, I asked that for a specific reason, because I noticed on the website it also says that you have investigated Bigfoot encounters. And while
Mm,
today we are not focusing on Bigfoot, you and um,
indeed.
I was curious if you've ever been asked to investigate cryptids other than Bigfoot. Have you ever had any of those cases?
Yes, we did get contacted by we've been contacted by a few people who have had sightings of large birds, like
Mm.
larger than large birds, kind of in the category, uh, thunderbird on the cryptid scale. Uh,
No kidding.
yes,
Wow.
we've
Are
had.
you free to talk about like what you guys did for the case?
Yeah, honestly, the most recent one, it honestly didn't get too far. The person who contacted us had, they shared their story, and we tried to follow up with them, but it didn't really go too far.
Mm.
It seemed like they kind of just wanted to, they had their story to share, and but we were prepared to roll out, to
Yeah.
go out to the site to see what we could find. But unfortunately, that particular one didn't go much farther than that.
Okay.
On the Aside from that, though, we did do an armchair report on generally the lore around sightings of large, like unnaturally large birds or uncharacteristically large birds. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I did see on the podcast, it was an older episode that you guys had done an episode
Hmm.
specifically on thunderbirds and large birds and all
Yeah.
of that. So yeah, very interesting. Oh wow. I didn't realize that there was a case for that it and it's actually it's not surprising sometimes when I hear that, like, yeah, they put in their story and then, phew, gone. You never hear from them again because, people get afraid or scared or nervous to be associated with that possibly. I mean,
Hmm.
there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't want to proceed with something like that. But yeah, so interesting. I did a little bit on Thunderbirds. We'll have to have you back and talk about those at length. But
Hmm.
today, I would love to talk with you about two cryptids in particular, two creatures in particular. I shouldn't say cryptid because I don't know anything about one of them. We're going to start with Tommyknockers.
Okay.
Okay, and when I say I don't know
Cool.
anything about them, I couldn't even describe one to you. I don't know.
Really?
Stephen King
Nothing at
wrote a
all.
book.
Completely from scratch.
Stephen King wrote a book. That's it. That's it.
Stephen
So,
King. Actually, interesting. Stephen King is going to come back as a theme today,
oh,
based on
okay.
based on the topics. Um, yeah. So stand by. No. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Tommyknockers. Which from the get go, we do kind of get into muddy water there with the just kind of identifying a cryptid, right? It's one of those, like, how do we categorize these things, really? We're splitting hairs on who gets to go where. But so there are some who would probably debate the validity of calling a Tommyknocker a cryptid. There are elements of their morphology that kind of could fall into the category of those kind of fey, kind of trickster or protector entity kind of lore. And there's also elements of, just straight up haunting activity. But essentially, a Tommyknocker, as we know them in particular in Colorado, they are a small creature that is said to be the caretakers and watchful guardians of the mine, as in, old, 19th century mining operations. This is where this lore of this creature comes from.
Okay.
It is descended from an older tradition called simply knockers. The Cornish miners back in Britain had a similar association with very distinctly fey type entity that was revered and honored and respected. Offerings were left and communications were made with these beings in order to maintain healthy and safe mining operations. If the knockers were upset, then the mine is not going to do well, and the workers within are also would also be in trouble. So it was very important to make sure a good relationship with these creatures was maintained. Immigrant miners made their way to the West during the gold and silver rushes in the 19th century, and the what emerged then was an Americanized version of the same sort of being with the distinct American twist on it. They were Tommyknockers. They get their name from the fact that you can hear them knocking, little bangs and pops within the mind, and that's how you know that the Tommyknockers are there and that they're happy. Sometimes they're said to lead to a good vein, or lead folks away from danger.
So they'll actually knock in a direction of a good vein or
Mm-hmm.
to avert danger.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. Right. Actually, one of the rare instances where it's actually wise to follow some kind of fey being when they're calling. Right. Usually, every other scenario is pretty distinctly cautionary against, don't follow if you hear your name called, kind of thing. That's usually a thing, and that still holds true here. but specifically when the knocking is a sign to follow, either towards prosperity or to get away from danger.
Okay. Are you referring to when don't follow when you hear your name called? Is that a connection to like Appalachian lore
That
or?
is actually pretty consistent throughout most Fae type lore that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
at least we'll say, off the top of my head, I can confidently say throughout most of the anglicized world, if nothing else.
Okay.
There are some, some crossovers and amalgamations in colonized regions, but generally speaking, yes,
Okay.
that's pretty standard.
Okay. Now it was these Cornish miners. This is kind of where the legend is born with the
Right.
Cornish miners.
Yes,
Okay.
the lineage of Tommyknockers specifically is confidently traced through uh, Cornish miners. Yes.
Okay. Okay. How long back does this span? How long is their lore?
That is a good question. At least, I will confidently say it's at least a few hundred years back from the 19th century. So we're looking at a good 500-year or so time period where you can start really identifying, yeah, this is where we start recognizing this particular descriptions of this particular entity distinctly. Now, before that, I don't know specifically. I would assume it probably can go back farther, but as far as like the distinct references to the knockers and the Tommyknockers.
Okay. What do they look like? How are they described?
Great question. Usually they're associated with kind of green lights, green mist, different, slightly different variations in color. Most commonly, in distinct points of light, disembodied lights. But usually the green tint is pretty notable. Within the mine, miners use they have little headlamps. Back in the old day, they would have just a candle with a mirror to help light their way. So sometimes when lights would be seen in a mine, and that they were known to not be associated with one of the members of the mining team, that was a good indicator that it was a Tommyknocker.
Okay.
So yes, I think I'm getting a little bit lost.
No, that's
The
okay.
lights,
No,
what do they look like?
well, yeah. So for the Tommyknockers themselves, do they actually have a physical description? And I know that can be hard to kind of nail down too, but if they're Fey-like, are they a
Mhm.
bipedal kind of
Yeah.
creature, troll-like?
Right. So, like I said, more often than not, it's just the lights and the knocking. But when
Okay.
they are seen manifest, they look just like little people, kind of like gnomes,
Oh,
long beards, and dressed similarly to the miners themselves.
okay. I'm thinking of Snow White for some reason. The
A
connection to
little
Snow
bit,
a
yeah, yeah,
little bit. Yeah. Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Um, but and usually again, but green garments.
Right.
Those are commonly very distinctive. It's that green color is usually pretty consistent. Now, later on, though, and particularly in the Colorado mines, in say the later 19th century, early 20th century, we start getting associations with them actually being the spirits of miners who have died in accidents,
Oh, wow.
and that they are either haunting the mine and it is now cursed and they have become a Tommyknocker. They become part of the mine itself, and their destiny is now intertwined, or they have been taken by some spirit of the mine, right? So there are some of these stories where a mine was no good, and a miner had heard their name being called, and they were led to their doom in an open shaft or something, and then became one of the Tommyknockers.
Ooh. Ooh, this is perfect material for October.
Mhm.
This is creeping
Mm.
me out. It's also very cold in my house right now, so I'm like, "Ooh, okay."
In particular, those that was a story from, I believe, near Central City, Colorado, near oh, what's the name of this? Um, oh, Victor, Colorado. It's an old mining town, and then there's a lot of, you know, all of these old towns and cities, really classic Wild West stuff. You know,
Hmm.
all these boom towns growing up around these mining operations. Really, a lot of activity, a lot of prosperity, but a lot of the kind of rough and tumble stuff uh,
Hmm.
in the meantime. But then you've got all of this Tommyknocker lore associated with mines, and mining is and always has been an incredibly dangerous activity.
Right.
Um, in, extremely laborious, a lot of intense hardship, and a lot of labor union conflict
Hmm.
arose around it. So there's all kinds of emotional investments on all sides for this kind of situation. And there's even stories of Tommyknockers coming into the town, and in this form, actually as more of the ghost spirit kind of form of a miner who has lost their life in in the mine, or even in the labor wars.
Okay. So it sounds like I see what you're saying, where it gets a little muddy water here, trying to classify it as a cryptid. It seems to me the way you're describing this entity creature, it's like paranormal meets cryptid or cryptozoology. Because if you're taking cryptid just
Sure.
as it's a hidden animal, it's a physical thing, it's
Mhm.
explainable. We haven't found it. So paranormal
Mhm.
meets this cryptid world, and just kind
Sure.
of the perfect meshing of the two.
But then again, in the miner culture, right, the cultural mindset of the mining community, that Tommyknocker, the term Tommyknocker, maybe doesn't necessarily need to specifically identify a particular entity.
Mm-hmm.
More so that it's looking towards anything weird or supernatural that is connected to the mind could be just considered generally as a Tommyknocker.
Okay, got you. Okay, well, I only had one more question on the Tommyknocker, and then we are going to move on to our other cryptid. Um, are folks still having this experience in the modern day?
Hmm. That is a good question. I would say so. Yes, there are a few in the sense of kind of the identifying it as maybe more paranormal haunting activity.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of paranormal investigations that do continuously go on around some of these abandoned mines, and I don't know of any. Like, I don't personally know anyone who is currently working as a miner to be able to answer that question. And that's a really important thing to address and follow up on. So I don't know, but I do know that paranormal investigators do like going into the abandoned mines and looking for spirits, which, as we've identified, could technically be considered Tommyknockers. So
Okay.
does
Okay.
that answer your
Yes,
question?
it does. Yes, it does. That makes total sense. I like even as I was asking, I was like, do they still do mining like they used to? I don't know. I mean, I know it's still happening, but I think it has grown a bit safer. Back in the day, you would have a mine collapse or a massive
Hmm.
explosion, and hundreds of men would be lost forever, just buried forever
Right.
immediately.
Yeah.
And you don't hear those stories quite as frequently today. Of course, tragedy still strikes and all of that, and it is still emotional, and they still have upheavals, but yeah, not quite as much. But that makes perfect sense that there's going to be all these abandoned mines, and there's still, if the activity was there before, it's still going to be there now, and investigators are going to be the ones to find it. So that makes perfect
Hmm.
sense. Okay, with that, let us move on to our other cryptid. This one, I do know, I think I know what I'm talking about. Everybody thinks they know what they are talking about because pop culture has taken this one up in its little hands. And
Mhm.
the cryptid I am referring to is called the Wendigo. And some people
Mhm.
even get hesitant to say that word out loud. It's almost like
Mhm.
another Native American term that I won't say right now.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
so
No need to no
no
need
need,
to bring them in.
no.
Okay.
I like peace. I like my safe home. Um, let's just start here with the basic idea, the story that everybody knows, and then we're gonna elaborate. Go forth.
Okay. Um, well, the story that everybody knows is, yeah, that's a hard one to actually answer that way.
Oh,
So actually, I was thinking about this afternoon, and the last couple of days when we were talking about it, and I realized that what actually is going on here, what actually is going on is that we now have two distinct entities, right?
mm-hmm,
We have something that has formed out of this kind of pop culture literary genre that has created its own thing. And maybe it's better to regard them separately rather than try to say that, it might be helpful to look at it this way. Because essentially, what most people probably see, the image that appears in most Anglo-American minds
mm-hmm,
is when the word is mentioned, is a dark figure in the woods with skeletal face of a deer and antlers, right?
mm-hmm,
And that this is some kind of just a dark entity and an embodiment of evil. And we can, I'd say probably Stephen King is partially to blame for that. Well, I blame the fans more for taking it on. Because if I remember correctly, the appearance of this creature was in the Pet Cemetery, but I don't think he specifically identified it as a Wendigo. He did describe it this way, though, a dark figure as kind of the embodiment of evil.
mm-hmm,
But it was others who had picked up on the idea of a Wendigo and kind of attached that image to it as what they assumed it to be. Now, the Native American, the indigenous Algonquin Wendigo, is different. That is a creature that used to be a human being that has succumbed to a condition after being completely corrupted by resorting to cannibalism, right? It's like an ultimate taboo. They've crossed the line and gone to this, crossed this line, and by doing so, is now cursed to become this cursed creature who is with sunken eyes. Think more like Resident Evil, right?
mm-hmm,
The later evolutions, Resident Evil, like really, really creepy, sunken eyes, completely voraciously hungry, will eat and consume, yet will never be satisfied. And this is the punishment for crossing this line, engaging in that taboo of cannibalism. And that's what a Wendigo is. And they're nasty beasties, not to be trifled with, and steer clear. Now, later on, actually, even before Stephen King, there were like dime novel and kind of Pulp Fiction novels that depicted a similar creature with the antlers and stuff. And Stephen King kind of took some inspiration from that and went on. So that's kind of the origin of this evolution of kind of the pop culture version of the Wendigo versus
okay.
the personally more frightening, nasty Algonquin version.
And is that the main misconception or misunderstandings that we're having, or are you just trying to kind of separate for us here the basically the two
Kind of.
entities? Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, yeah. What I would, yeah, and I think it is actually a personal peeve of mine. I would say whenever I see this antlered creature and
Mm-hmm.
that it's identified or depicted as a Wendigo, like please stop doing that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I think that's just it's because it's inaccurate in that context, right?
Okay.
But also recognizing that it is difficult to just do that. Like, it's not the same as, like, we're not talking like sports teams mascots, right? Like, it is now I think it is possible to regard it, because it is a literary phenomenon of its own.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's the distinction, right? Just the fictionalized version and the maybe misconception that has led to this new other thing.
Right.
But
Right.
like, if you really want to talk Wendigo, right? So it's kind of like, yeah, it's the difference between total fantasy and similarly, like Stephen King's version of Tommyknockers are aliens, right? And the literary fiction version of a Wendigo is very different than the Algonquin folklore version of the Wendigo. So that's the distinction, and that's the important thing to be mindful of.
Right. Well, and it's also disrespectful too. It's if I'm understanding you correctly, it's a whitewashed version
Yes.
of this
Yeah.
Algonquin legend.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, with with its ability to spread like that, whitewashed or no, I was wondering. So it started with Algonquin lore and legends. Did other tribes have a similar? Did they talk about a similar type entity, creature, something of their own kind of versions?
Not like that, no.
Okay, okay.
As far as I know, that is pretty. That specific type of being
Mhm.
is pretty distinct, and it's a very strong. It is a very strong cultural element, actually. There are ceremonies around it. There's a lot of elements of it that are tied to famine, right? Considerations recognizing like what to do in the case of famine and hardship to avoid the possibility of resorting to the dangerous, terrible things that would go along with Wendigo-ness.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's an Algonquin word for it that I'm not
Not going to say.
proficient in the Algonquin language.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, 'cause, well, I was wondering if you weren't going to say it for other reasons, which, brings me to the question, is aside from this idea, this fact that it's disrespectful, and especially in the way that we're thinking of it, is it also something that we should not do, is to name it,
So,
is to
like, talk about, like, the other thing?
well, yeah, in that way, yeah, like, should we not be talking about it? Should we not be naming the creature?
Not necessarily. That's one of those. I mean, it's kind of like a mindfulness. That particular tradition doesn't necessarily have that caution and prohibition, so to
Okay,
speak.
okay.
Also, the other thing we're talking about, we'll say skinwalkers.
Mhm,
On the Navajo reservation specifically, my experience has been with those Navajo people, Dene, as they call themselves. They only refer to it as SW while on the res.
oh,
But
okay.
but off the res, they speak. They will say it, but not casually, right? Like, we're not just gonna throw it around, and we're not gonna say it unless you mean it.
Yeah,
But it doesn't have the strong taboo off the res as it does on. And actually, for the social theory behind it is that it is more likely to appear if you say its name too many times. And it seems less likely that it would happen if you are not on the res.
oh, okay,
Therefore, it's a little more okay. Still not
okay,
something to be played with,
right.
but that is how actually the Navajo Rangers, John Dover and Stanley Milford, they are my informants on that particular topic.
Okay. So yeah, so it's also just a mindfulness of it. I didn't realize that it seems to be even more impactful on the reservation as opposed to outside of it. Like it's the energy, I don't know, tied to that particular land.
Yeah, there are yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of things to go along with that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it seems like maybe there might be something to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that extra education. I didn't realize we were going to talk about that a little bit. All very unnerving, kind of scary, cryptic creatures and entities today. Perfect for this
Which
October show.
which again, going back to what we were saying before about kind of this gray area of
Mm-hmm.
like, can they actually technically be called cryptids? Because
Right.
both are actually human
Right.
that
Right.
have become something else in a similar manner, and that's an interesting distinction too. And another point, I think that is a good point to make. I have seen or heard people using Wendigo and Skinwalker interchangeably, and
Oh,
that is definitely something that one should not be doing.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
is different.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. I have seen that myself as well. And at one time, I would have done that because I just didn't think about it.
There was even one I've seen people do general like werewolf, dogman, Lugaroo, Skinwalker, Wendigo. Like, uh, what are you doing? Those are not the same thing.
Right, right. It's just, I don't know how that happens, but yeah, it does, where they start to meld all of these things together. Don't even get me started on the TikTok renditions of what these creatures actually are and what they're doing. They're creepy, but that's not what we're talking about.
It does give me kind of like I have to limit my interactions with limit my commenting on Instagram sometimes because
Yeah.
I'm not the Wendigo police. But geez, people, people, please.
All right. All right. Well, this time has gone by so fast. It always does. Just a wonderful chat again. And thank you so much. We are at the end here, so it is time for final questions, final thoughts. I got something new for you this time, and then we'll close it out. So, I've only got two for you today, but one, I'm going to have you elaborate a bit. So, my first question for you, because I have to ask you, I know we weren't going to talk about it, but I have to ask you, Bigfoot, yes or no, and why?
Yes,
Okay.
um, for all of the reasons that you have already laid out in your first episode. Um, number one, and then some, because of there's an additional element of the folklore that goes along with it, particularly a piece of knowledge that has been passed on to me from an Anishinaabe relatives that it is a being that appears to us when we are not in line with, we're out of sync with nature. Something's wrong. So they appear to remind us to get back on that path. So it's something to, it's an important thing to be aware of. And I kind of think about that in the context of all of these things going on, with climate change and these all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and why one of them might appear to you to help remind you to get back on the path. Also, personal conversations I've had with again the Navajo Rangers, who have lots of cases where they went out and investigated them. And for the folks who don't know who the Navajo Rangers are, just really quick, the Navajo Nation, these are federal law enforcement officers that are work for the Navajo Nation. So res cops to the extreme. In addition to their regular police duties, they're officially mandated to investigate what Western society would categorize as paranormal. So Bigfoot, UFO, weird, creepy, whatever. They get a call on it, they're going to go out and investigate it and treat it as it is to be treated. So they treat it along with the regular police work. So cases from them, also cases from other adjacent tribal folks.
Hmm.
One in particular from Southern Ute. So I know people who have had personal encounters and come at it from that very kind of that native way of just accepting it along with everything else.
Okay. All right. All right. And one more question for you. Because you're going to be one of my lovely October guests. We're doing something special this month. Jason, would you tell us a ghost story?
Yes, I would be happy to. A few years ago, in 2019, I was visiting some friends down in Alamosa, which is a small town in the San Luis Valley of Colorado, southern Colorado, northern New Mexico. It's a giant arrowhead-shaped valley, known as a mystic place, right? I'm down there. I was visiting friends, and I was actually doing a talk about the supernatural San Luis Valley. And a friend introduced me to someone who had had a remarkable, phenomenal encounter at the cemetery, the municipal cemetery of Alamosa, at a monument the locals lovingly refer to as the Witch's Grave. They call it the Witch's Grave because the inscription says that the interred died on October 36th of 1913.
36?
So this is, yes,
Okay.
36, October 36. So all of the mystical associations, this idea of 36 degrees of Freemasonry and the numerology of 1913, and that the other inscription, another inscription on the, because it's a family monument, there's a tomb, there's one of the other interred passed away on October 31st, years prior. So Halloween, October 36, and this assumption that it's maybe associated with some kind of mystical witch's calendar. So the locals then call it the Witch's Grave. So this individual had said that they went out to the grave. They had a visitor. They had a friend visiting, and they wanted to go freak them out. So they brought them there and took a few pictures, and realized that they forgot the coin. As is the local custom, one must put a coin or something of value on the grave itself to make sure that, basically to prevent the hitchhiker effect, right? Make sure they don't bring a curse home. Make sure they don't bring something home with them. And so he went back to his car to get his coin. And once he got the coin and was getting ready to come back, he looked through the pictures and saw that in the photograph there is so the statue itself is of a woman holding a wreath, and in her hand she has her index finger extended and is holding the wreath with the other turned in fingers. One photo, her finger is extended. The second photo, it is not. All 5 fingers are now clenched around the wreath. And he freaked out. He said, "We gotta go. We gotta go." Grabbed his friends. They're like, "What's going on? I don't know what's going on." And he took them away, drove, peeled out, left the cemetery, bat out of hell, got a few blocks down the road before he stopped and showed them. There were 4 of them, I believe, if I remember correctly. There were 4 of them in the car. 2 out of the other 3 were really freaked out and excited. The 4th one, the friend who was supposed to be taken there to be freaked out, didn't seem very impressed at all. It was, God, it's a shutter trick, whatever. So yeah, they were really freaked out. He just rolled on this for days and days, and heard that I was coming around, and thought I would appreciate hearing about it. And he shared the photos with me, and we took them and had them analyzed. Actually, I gave them to Heather. And if you remember from the last time Heather was on, and this taps into those non-degree having skills. She's a photographer, and she is a really awesome graphic designer. So somebody knows how to make an image. You have a pretty good idea of how you would fake something like that if if you were to do so. And she wasn't able to find any shenanigans. It seems to be, each photo appears to be depicting physically what is viewable to the eye.
Whoa. How, oh my God. Did you guys do any further investigating on that, or that's like just at the point of the photos?
Yeah, actually we went to the grave right around golden hour and twilight, and we took our own pictures, tried to see what we could find. The finger was extended the whole time we were there, and our photos picked up any anomalies. And I actually ran it by one of my professors, because I'm getting ready to actually present this case at a conference this weekend.
Oh, wow.
So I ran it by one of my professors, the demonologist, whose birthday party was happening last time I was on the show. He pointed something out, this idea of what happens if you don't give the offering, right? And he noticed that the individual had forgotten. He took the pictures first, right? And he had forgotten to put the coin down. So when he went back to get the coin, and then looked at the photos and realized that was when he noticed the anomaly. So he had danced with the consequences of what might happen had you not
left the offering. Yeah. Well, he's very it's lucky that he thought to oh yeah, I gotta go get this thing, because who knows? Your professor is absolutely right. What are the consequences of forgetting? That was that was a chilly story. There were moments I was like, oh no.
Right.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. It's a real story, like I know you, and you heard this firsthand, and it's I like these personal stories so much, so I appreciate it, sir. Where would you like to direct folks to find out more, to follow you, to learn about any events you got coming down the pike, anything like that?
Probably the easiest way is just go to the link tree at paracryptology.
Okay.
Just put it all together. Paracryptology. And I will probably, I'm going to try to set it up. We'll do a, for our merch store. We've got merch. Go check it out. It's got the old name still, Rockin' Crypto Science Society, because it's still really good, good looking stuff. But for the listeners today, we can do a promo code for 10% off. I'm going to try to do Paranorm Girl, if it'll all fit.
Okay. Or we can you can take a shorter PGP, PNG, whatever. If you want to do Paranorm Girl, you want to do that?
Let's do PGP.
PGP. All right, listeners, you heard it. Take PGP, plug it in at their merch store, get 10% off. And, and you're supporting a great society that does fantastic work, and they're doing it for the right reasons. So I'll be sure to do a direct link to the merch platform down below as well, so people can easily find that. And was that all you wanted to plug right now before we wrap it up?
I mean, yeah. I mean, everything's in there.
Okay.
Blog, YouTube, all the stuff. And we don't have any specific events coming up, but that's where you'll find it if it is.
Okay, wonderful. And do you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom, or a piece of advice to leave with us this time around?
Don't whistle at night.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Don't do it. All right, sir. And if you have time, hang on. After we are finished here, we're going to jump backstage to Patreon just for like 5 minutes. We're going to talk about a cryptid called Moopits. Is that right? Moopeats?
Moopeats.
Okay, I've never heard of it. I'm excited to get that from you. But for now, Jason, president of the Society for Arcane Studies, folklore master in the making, in process. Thank you so much once again for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this, and sleep with one eye open.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Jason, for joining me once again. Always a pleasure, always learn so much from you. Listeners, follow the goings-on over at the Society for Arcane Studies by visiting the link that I have provided below. And take a moment to visit the merch section on the website. It's a good opportunity to show support for the work that the Society is doing by making a purchase and get 10% off while doing so with the code PGP. There are but 3 days left until the cutoff to submit your story to be read during Paranorm Girls Trick or Treat Live Halloween Celebration. Again, that is taking place Sunday, October 29th, 5 p.m. Pacific on YouTube. Get your stories into paranormgirlpod@gmail.com by this Friday. Don't forget to check out Ghost Tales by the Fireside, produced by Clem Dalloway. His show is incredibly well done. I have been a listener for quite some time, and I'm always looking forward to the new episode. In celebration of October, he is airing a show every week this month. All ghost stories, spooky original soundtracks, and a mesmerizing, calm voice that really brings the telling of these stories to a whole other level and makes them all the more unsettling. Ghost Tales by the Fireside is available anywhere you listen to podcasts. That is a wrap on today's episode. Join me again next week. Stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.